Part 78. Amnesiac Bigshot remembers only me, the boss lost his memory and only remembers me. Author, Ding Jiashu. Chapter 771. It was really different from other girls. When someone suddenly pulled her into his arms, she didn't panic at all. When Xiao tilted his head, "Why are you shouting? I know you are coming." Fu Nanli lowered his eyes and looked at her. "No matter how old you are still my little baby." As he spoke, he took out the bag of peach-flavored candies from his coat pocket and waved it in front of her eyes. Wen Xiao didn't think anything of what he said over the phone just now, but now when he said it in a low and tired voice, Wen Xiao actually felt a little embarrassed. "That cashier lady keeps staring at you, She was declaring her sovereignty. She had never said such disgusting words of love. The man held her in his arms, pressed her back against the wall, peeled a piece of candy and put it into her mouth, then bowed his head and kissed her lips. The wind was swirling overhead. Wen Xiao's face felt a little hot, and his heart was beating fast. After a long while, he finally stopped and touched the corner of her mouth with his cool fingertips. "The peach taste is quite strong." Before Wen Xiao came to her senses, the man took out another red envelope and handed it to her. "I hope my Xiao is healthy, happy, and everything is fine." Wen Xiao was so dazed by his kiss that he immediately said thank you as soon as he took the red envelope. He wanted to say something more, but when the man held him in his arms, Wen Xiao felt that he was not happy. "What's wrong with you?" Fu Nanli stroked her long hair. "It's nothing, I want to hug you. It's so soft, holding it in your arms can make your heart collapse, as if all your worries have disappeared." "Did something happen?" Wen Xiao was held in his arms, and his voice seemed a bit muffled. "Nothing." Only then did Wen Xiao remember the gift he wanted to give him, and took out the red velvet box from his down jacket pocket. "Happy New Year." As he spoke, he opened the box, and under the dim light, Fu Nanli saw the beautiful and exquisite lamb jade pendant. "When I went to Longhua Temple with my mother, I bought this jade pendant that had been consecrated. The chief abbot of the temple said that it is very effective in keeping safe. You can keep it in your wallet." Fu Nanli's heart softened, and he pressed the back of her head and kissed her deeply. After a long while, he took the box in her hand, with soft and doting eyes. "This gift is very good, I like it very much." Wen Xiao pursed his lips and smiled. "As long as you like it, it's getting late. Are you going back to the apartment or to the shallow lake?" Fu Nanli put the jade pendant into the compartment of his wallet and put the small box into his coat pocket. "Can I stay here with you?" The cold wind choked Wen Xiao so much that he almost couldn't breathe. "Huh." Fu Nanli hugged her waist, which was covered by the thick down jacket. He couldn't feel her waist, so his big hands lingered back and forth. "Is it okay to sleep with you tonight?" Wen Xiao's big eyes blinked like stars in the sky. "Why? Why?" Because he was greedy for her warmth and wanted to hold her to sleep. "Is it okay?" he just asked, with such deep and passionate eyes, as if he was begging her humbly. Which woman can resist his gentle attack? "Yes, yes, but you have to be careful. My mother is very conservative and traditional. Leave early tomorrow morning, eh?" "Good." She took him through the back door and looked around. Her mother and Uncle Ji were in the yard next door. The light in Wen Kai's room was still on. Wen Xiao took his hand and ran back to his room quickly, closing the door. "The lights in the room are dim." Amnesiac Bigshot remembers only me, the boss lost his memory and only remembers me. Author, Ding Jiashu. Chapter 772. Fu Nanli took a look at her bed. It was a small bed that he had once disliked. It was difficult to stretch out his legs. He sat by the bed, and Wen Xiao was a little at a loss. The room was too small, the bed was too small, and it was a familiar territory. Mom and the others were in the neighboring courtyard separated by a wall. with Wen Qi and Wen Mo at the opposite door, and occasionally you could hear Wen Kai's shouts playing games. How could she leave people behind in such an environment? People are kept by themselves, so I have to finish the night on my knees. The room was well heated, and just as she was about to take off her down jacket, Fu Nanli took her hand and said, "I'm hungry." The old man fell ill before he had time to eat dinner. He has been struggling until now, and he is really hungry. Wen Qiao looked at him in embarrassment. "Didn't you have a drink with your friends? Just drink and no food?" "No." Wen Qiao tooted, "How come you don't know how to take care of yourself? Drinking on an empty stomach hurts your stomach." He sat on the bed and looked up at her. Wen Qiao looked helpless. "I can only simply cook instant noodles for you to eat, for fear of waking them up. Want me to come to the kitchen with you?" "No, I'm fine." About 10 minutes later, Wen Qiao appeared at the door of the room carrying a small copper pot. Wen Kai's voice came from behind, "Are you not full for dinner?" Wen Qiao's heart skipped a beat and turned to look at him. "What? Can't it? Wen Qi, did I say no? Why are you so fierce?" With that said, he had already walked to the door of Wen Qiao's room, pretending to open the door for her. Wen Qiao immediately stood in front of him and looked at him defensively. "What are you doing?" "Open the door for you, my dear sister." Wen Qiao, "No, I can drive it myself." Wen Qi frowned. "Why are you acting weird? Is there someone hiding in the room?" Wen Qiao immediately said sternly, "What are you talking about? It's past 12 o'clock, why aren't you sleeping yet?" The door creaked open, and Fu Nanli stretched out his hand to support the low door frame. "Why don't you come in?" A slap in the face. How can Sister Qiao save her face? Wen Qi was stunned on the spot. Then he pushed Wen Qiao into the room thoughtfully, and gently closed the door for them, and whispered against the door, "Brother-in-law, I just pretend I didn't see you." Fu Nanli had a smile on his lips and looked down at the person leaning against the door. "Your brother is very considerate." Wen Qiao put the small pot on the desk. "Come over and eat." In a small copper pot, there is tonkotsu ramen, a sunny side-up egg, 2 pieces of lunch meat, and some small green vegetables. It looks very appetizing. Fu Nanli sat on her chair, picked up her chopsticks, and slowly ate the instant noodles she cooked by herself. "It tastes really good. Would you like some?" Wen Qiao sat cross-legged on the edge of the bed and looked at him. "I'm not hungry, just eat." Fu Nanli ate instant noodles as the first meal of the new year. It was also the first instant noodles in his life. After eating the instant noodles, Wen Qiao handed him a tissue. "Wipe it off, you can go to bed." "I have to brush my teeth," the young master said. Wen Qiao narrowed his eyes. "In the courtyard house where we live, the bathroom is outside the house, and the sound of opening and closing the door is quite loud. It doesn't matter if you don't clean it all night, right? Can we just make do with it? You won't be able to sleep if you don't brush your teeth." Wen Qiao held his forehead. This young master really couldn't handle it at all. He could only tiptoe out of the room. As soon as he went out, the door opposite opened and Wen Qi said in a breathy voice, "Wen Qiao, do you want my help?" Wen Qiao gritted his teeth. "No, go to sleep. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment." Amnesiac Bigshot remembers only me, the boss lost his memory and only remembers me. Author, Ding Jiashu. Chapter 773. Wen Qiao brought a basin of water, a new toothbrush, squeezed a little toothpaste and gave it to Fu Nanli. Finally, the work before going to bed was completely ready. Wen Qiao climbed into bed. "Hurry up and go to bed." The lights went out and the room was dark. The man's smiling voice came, "How many times have I urged you? It seems you are in a hurry." Wen Qiao. What and what? Just because it's getting late, okay. The bed was a single bed. When Fu Nanli, a 188-year-old man with a strong body, moved up, the space became even more cramped. Wen Qiao could only be forced to stick close to him. The goose-down quilt had been exposed by his mother during the day. It was very warm and filled with the smell of the sun and the smell of male hormones on his body. Wen Qiao's face was slightly hot. "You go a little over there," she said. Fu Nanli grabbed her hand and moved it to his waist. "What?" She was a little alert. She put her hand across his waist and reached behind him. "Please touch and see, I'm already close to the edge of the bed. If I move any further, I'll fall to the ground." Wen Qiao touched it and found that it was indeed at the bedside. Oh! Her head rested on his arm, his hand fell on her waist, and the temperature in the room kept rising. Wen Qiao originally thought of letting him go at 5:30 tomorrow morning, because Uncle Ji would get up at 6 o'clock at the latest, because there is a custom in the streets here where children will get up and walk around the streets begging for sweets. The first batch of children he should be here at 6 o'clock. Someone at home needs to deliver candies. Unexpectedly, she fell into a deep sleep and forgot to set the alarm clock. A child's voice came from outside the door, "Uncle Ji, I wish you a Happy New Year." Wen Qiao woke up suddenly, and when she opened her eyes, she saw the man's sleeping face. It was time to wait, but she actually admired it silently. The sleeping face was really beautiful. Uncle Ji's voice came, "Come to the room over here to get some candies. My brothers and sisters are still sleeping." A group of children ran to the yard next door, cheering, and it was very lively. Fu Nanli had never seen such a scene before, and his voice was hoarse. "Why are there so many people?" Wen Qiao explained to him, and he lowered his eyes and said, "It is somewhat similar to Halloween in foreign countries. It's just that our neighbors here are very familiar with each other, so we have such a custom. Get up quickly and go out quietly. You can't be seen by Uncle Ji, let alone my mother." Fu Nanli sat up slowly. The little girl had been pressing his arm to sleep. Her hand was a little numb. He looked worried and said, "Press it for me." "Wen Qiao, hurry up, okay." Fu Nanli only wore a shirt. After sleeping all night, the shirt was a little wrinkled, which was somewhat inconsistent with his noble young master's temperament, but it was also a bit more decadent and lazy. Fu Nanli leaned on the bed and said, "It's not yet dawn." Wen Qiao lay on top of him, reached for his iron gray sweater on the wooden chair, sat on his lap, and hurriedly helped him get dressed. Fu Nanli's eyes darkened a bit, and he reached out to hold the back of her head and kissed her forcefully again. Uncle Ji's voice came from the window, "Qiao Qiao, would you like steamed buns or glutinous rice balls for breakfast? Or rice cakes?" Wen Qiao pushed Fu Nanli away and said angrily, "When is kissing inappropriate?" Then he said to Uncle Ji outside the window, "I can do it, Uncle Ji." "Then let's cook rice cakes and eat them." "Good." Fu Nanli had already put on a sweater and looked at her with confused eyes. "How do I go out? Your Uncle Ji seems to be busy with breakfast in the kitchen. Will he see me when I go out?" Amnesiac Bigshot remembers only me, the boss lost his memory and only remembers me. Author, Ding Jiashu. Chapter 774. Wen Qiao gritted his teeth, "Isn't it because of your indolence?" Fu Nanli held her hand, "So how do you plan to send me out?" "Wen Qiao, we can only let Wen Qi lure Uncle Ji away. Go to Grandma's house with me for morning tea." Wen Qiao agreed to him by mistake, and sent Wen Qi to lead Uncle Ji in the kitchen to the yard next door. Wen Qiao, who was neatly dressed, took Fu Nanli's hand and ran out. As soon as the door to the backyard opened, I heard my uncle's voice from behind, "Ah Qiao." Wen Qiao paused and looked back. Su Ce sent people to protect Wen Qiao near the house. Some people also kept an eye on the courtyard at night. They knew that Fu Nanli came in last night. They had been waiting for the young master to come out, but they didn't expect that they would wait until the morning. The young master didn't even come out. Then he hurriedly reported to Susi. Susi came to Wenqiao and saw her dragging Fu Nanli out. He actually stayed overnight secretly. Susi felt as if his cabbage had been spoiled, and naturally he was not in a good mood. Wenqiao felt guilty. Uncle. Fu Nanli looked indifferent and still held Wenqiao's hand, which was a bit dazzling in Susi's eyes. Is Mr. Fu staying here for the night? Fu Nanli, yes. Wenqiao, no. They all said in unison, and the atmosphere was a little awkward for a while. Fu Nanli said calmly, I came to see her last night, but it was too late, so I did stay here. I didn't do anything. I just stayed overnight. Susi's eyes were a little appreciative, and Wenqiao could tell that his uncle was somewhat hostile to Fu Nanli, so he explained, I kept him here. What else could Susi say? Even if he says a word, he is like an unreasonable and vicious elder who wields a stick to break up the mandarin ducks. Mr. Fu should try not to stay here in the future. Akiao's mother is conservative and doesn't accept living together before marriage. Wenqiao promised, it won't happen again. Then you go quickly, your mother seems to be getting up, don't let her catch you. Wenqiao took Fu Nanli's hand and walked out of the yard. The sky was slightly bright outside. The two walked on the slightly foggy bluestone road, left the alley, and got in the car. Your brother-in-law seems a little hostile to me. Wenqiao, no, you think too much. Fu Nanli raised his eyebrows slightly but did not answer. When they arrived at Yuanyi's mansion, the old lady had just gotten up. She couldn't believe that Fu Nanli and Wenqiao had arrived so early. She happily welcomed them into the house and asked the servants to prepare morning tea. The weather was freezing, and birds were perching on the branches and chirping. The servant prepared Xiao Keng's unique morning tea. Wenqiao took a sip of black tea and instantly felt warm. The old lady held the spoon gracefully and glanced at the young couple opposite. She was smiling. The more she looked at them, the more they seemed to be right. Then he straightened his face and said, I heard that your old man had a sudden illness and was sent to the hospital last night. Before Fu Nanli could stop her, the old lady told her what happened last night. Wenqiao was heartbroken. No wonder he always felt something was wrong with him last night. He seemed very sad and wanted to stay at her place for the first time. He reached out under the table and shook his hand. Fu Nanli shook his hand back and said to the old lady, the old man has a cerebral infarction. His blood pressure suddenly rose last night. He was sent to the hospital and checked. It's nothing serious. He will be fine after 2 days of rest. Amnesiac Bigshot remembers only me, the boss lost his memory and only remembers me. Author, Ding Jiashu. Chapter 775. The old lady sighed, you're celebrating the new year, why did you end up like this? You worked hard last night. Fu Nanli forced a smile. After breakfast, the old lady gave them 2 red envelopes. Wenqiao thanked the old lady and looked at Fu Nanli. Fu Nanli narrowed his eyes, what? Do you think I'm so old that I shouldn't receive red envelopes anymore? Wenqiao waved his hand quickly, I don't mean that, you don't want to be a villain. Fu Nanli gritted his teeth, can I not know what you are thinking? The old lady couldn't stop laughing. It was really interesting to see the 2 children bickering. The house hadn't been so lively for a long time. After a while, Ji Xianzheng came with Shen Tian and Chu Qinzhu. The old lady's face was not so pretty. Xianzheng, you are 1 year older than Nan Li, just tell me, when can you bring someone to show me? Who are you bringing? Aren't you bringing Shen Tian with you? Shen Tian called her grandma eagerly, and the old lady smiled so hard that her eyes narrowed to slits, and she was so happy when she gave her red envelopes. Why didn't your parents come? They will come over in the afternoon, and I will come over first to give you New Year greetings. Okay, okay. Shen Tian came to Fu Nanli and Wen Qiao again. He looked very well behaved and called uncle and aunt. Fu Nanli gave a red envelope to Wen Qiao. She was not prepared. She forgot that there was a junior like Shen Tian here. Shen Tian deliberately made trouble and stretched out his hand. Congratulations on getting rich, bring me the red envelope, aunt. Wen Qiao was a little embarrassed. She only brought the New Year's greetings to the old lady, but she went to Fu Nanli's residence to get them. After all, she was in a hurry in the morning and the shopping mall shops were not open yet. How can you still remember Shen Tian? Wen Qiao whispered, I owe it first, and I'll give it to you in the afternoon. Shen Tian was like a little scoundrel, can you still owe me this kind of thing? Auntie, you don't even have a family in your heart. Fu Nanli's temples twitched, speak to me properly. Shen Tian immediately sat upright and said, then I'll give it to you in the afternoon. Fu Nanli took out a red envelope from his coat pocket, handed it to Wen Qiao, and whispered, it's ready for you. Wen Qiao looked at him gratefully. What happened to his family last night, yet he could still think so much about her. How could she not be moved? Shen Tian said unforgivingly, did my uncle give it to me? Or did my aunt give it to me? Boss Fu Nanli sat and glanced at Shen Tian, what do you think? Shen Tian, who knows current affairs, is a Junja, my aunt gave it to me, thank you aunt. Ji Xianzheng and Chu Qinju also came over from the side hall and sat down on the sofa next to Fu Nanli and the others, why are you here so early? Wen Qiao didn't speak, letting Fu Nanli speak. Fu Nanli raised an eyebrow, come here early to pay New Year's greetings to the old lady. What's wrong? The floor heating in the house was fully turned on. Fu Nanli took off his coat and put it aside. Ji Xianzheng said again, why is your shirt so wrinkled? Didn't you change clothes? In an instant, everyone's eyes fell on Fu Nanli and Wen Qiao. Wen Qiao vividly performed there is no 300 taels of silver here for everyone. Of course he went home. He didn't stay at my house last night. His clothes may be wrinkled just because he forgot to change them. Fu Nanli, don't you think so? Ji Xianzheng, Chu Qinju, Shen Tian, and the old lady all looked at Wen Qiao blankly. Wen Qiao gestured with his hand unwillingly, it's true. Everyone, oh. At first, we didn't think of it in that regard, but with the little girl's unnecessary explanation, everyone understood that he stayed in the little girl's room yesterday. Tisk tisk. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Amnesiac Bigshot remembers only me, the boss lost his memory and only remembers me. Author, Ding Jiashu. Chapter 776. Everyone's expressions were a bit exciting. The old lady pulled Ji Xianzheng and Chu Qinju, come here and follow me to the kitchen to help. The little girl is thin-skinned, and these brats are here to make her feel embarrassed. Shen Tian was still standing in front of his uncle. Fu Nanli looked disgusted, don't you want to help your great-grandmother do what you can? Shen Tian was just about to say, Grandma, you don't need my help, but when he saw his uncle's face became extremely gloomy, he immediately understood and said quickly, I'm going to go for a walk in the yard. They were the only two people left in the small hall. Fu Nanli chuckled in a very low voice, I see you are panicking. Wen Qiao pretended to be calm, I'm not panicking. Fu Nanli's voice was doting, really? Yes. Fu Nanli had an expression on his face that said, okay, as long as you're happy. When they had lunch together at Yunnan Mansion, Wen Qiao felt that everyone looked at her with a bit of ambiguity. Thinking about it, her reaction in the morning seemed to be excessive. I've learned my lesson, and I must be even more calm in the future. After the meal, Wen Qiao proposed to visit his grandfather in the hospital. Fu Nanli was sitting in the car, his expression a little cold. I'm afraid he doesn't want to see you that much. After saying this, Fu Nanli was afraid of hurting her heart, so he added, we won't see him until his condition stabilizes, okay. Wen Xiao, I'm going to buy a bouquet of flowers and let Uncle Li bring it to him. I'll be outside the ward and won't go in. Is that okay? Her eyes were sincere. Fu Nanli knew that his little girl wanted to bury the hatchet with his grandfather and have a good relationship. It's a pity that the little girl showed infinite kindness, but the old man was so hostile to her. Well, go ahead. Lao Hu drove to the hospital. At the Fu family private hospital, Chiu Ya held flowers in one hand and a box of fruit in the other, and hurried to Mr. Fu's ward. Uncle Li opened the door and let her in. In the ward, the old man was sitting on the bedside, watching the noon news. Chiu Ya put the flowers and fruits aside and said with red eyes, Grandpa Fu, I came here as soon as I heard that you were sick and hospitalized. Fu Huaiyong smiled, good boy, I'm fine, you're interested. Chiu Ya sat on the chair next to the bed, Grandpa Fu, I will peel an apple for you to eat. Do you want to eat it? Fu Huaiyong nodded, then I'll trouble you. Chiu Ya sat by the bed and peeled an apple for the old man. You, old man, must take good care of yourself so that you can live a long life. When Fu Nanli and Wen Xiao came, they saw Chiu Ya sitting by the bed through the small window on the door. Fu Nanli saw it, and Wen Xiao naturally saw it too. She also held a bouquet of flowers in her hands. Fu Nanli's eyes were a little sinister, and he held her hand, just give the flowers to Uncle Li, let's go. Uncle Li reached out and took the flower from Wen Xiao's hand, I will convey to the old man that you have come to see him. Wen Xiao smiled and nodded, sorry to trouble you. Uncle Li didn't like Wen Xiao before. He felt that this little girl had used some conspiracy to confuse his young master. Now after getting in touch with him, his views on the little girl have changed. The young master doted on her to no end. She could obviously be proud of his favor, but the little girl always respected him as the housekeeper. This is a little girl who is not afraid of the powerful and does not look down on the people at the bottom. Frank and upright, the more you interact with him, the more you like him. Uncle Li knocked on the door and went in. He put the flowers on the bedside table on the other side and said with a smile, Xiao Wen sent them here specially, carnations and baby's breath. The flowers are so beautifully wrapped. Amnesiac Bigshot remembers only me, the boss lost his memory and only remembers me. Author, Ding Jiashu. Chapter 777. Chiu Ya glanced at the flowers placed by Uncle Li on the bedside table opposite and smiled calmly. He didn't even dare to come in, so the old man's illness must have a lot to do with Wen Xiao. Is Nanli also outside? Chiu Ya asked Uncle Li. Uncle Li smiled, yes, yes, the young master came here with Xiao Wen. Since Nan Li is here, why don't you come in and see his grandpa? Uncle Li's smile was a little awkward. The young master was probably worried that Xiao Wen's appearance would irritate the old man. But Chiu Ya brought it up, and Fu Huaiyong said, let them come in. In the corridor outside, Fu Nanli and Wen Xiao had just reached the elevator when Uncle Li stopped them. The next moment, Shura Field appeared in the ward. Chiu Ya looked at Wen Xiao with a smile, cut the apple into small pieces, put it into a porcelain plate, inserted a toothpick, put it aside, and whispered softly, Fu Grandpa, just take it and eat it when you want to. Fu Huaiyong said in a kind tone, good boy. These words seemed to be spoken to Wen Xiao. Chiu Ya is a good boy and she is a bad boy. It's a pity that this bad boy is too arrogant. He didn't seem to hear him criticizing others and didn't show any guilty expression. Fu Huaiyong's cheeks trembled and he said coldly, you guys go out first, Wen Xiao and I have something to say. Chiu Ya was eager to leave the ward with Uncle Li. Fu Nanli, however, remained unmoved, with an attitude of whatever you want to say it in front of me. Fu Huaiyong looked unhappy. Wen Qiao pulled Fu Nanli and whispered, "You go out first, I can do it." "Fu Nanli, if we can't reach an agreement, just come out directly, you know." Wen Qiao nodded. The ward was cleared until only 2 people were left. Wen Qiao is not a person who likes to talk sweet words. Naturally, she is not as popular as Chu Ya in front of elders who are not familiar with her. The old man's tone was a bit arrogant. "I heard that you have a hidden health problem, right?" Only then did Wen Qiao understand that Fu Nanli probably had a dispute with the old man last night because of this matter, so the old man fell ill and went to the hospital. She didn't rush to answer, she went through it in her mind. Realizing that lying was meaningless, he faced the old man's contemptuous eyes and said, "I do have some physical problems, but it will be solved in the future, medical skills have become so advanced." Before he finished speaking, the old man stopped him, "So you stayed with our Nan Li so that the Fu family could spend money to treat you, right?" Wen Qiao's eyebrows trembled. "No, I have money for medical treatment myself." The old man sneered lightly, "How much money do you have? This little girl doesn't know how high the sky is." Wen Qiao calculated, "It's enough to cure the disease." The old man said lightly, "Since you have enough money to treat yourself, why do you want to stay with Nan Li?" Wen Qiao was stunned for a moment, then said, "Because I like him." The old man laughed angrily, as if this was some big joke. Obviously, he is a stubborn old man who does not believe in love. Wen Qiao actually had many things to ask him, such as, "You must have never experienced love and you are so used to being flattered that you don't believe that there are feelings in this world that have nothing to do with money and power." Of course, she couldn't say this. She had a sense of propriety. If she said this, the old man would be afraid of going to the emergency room again. Then she would really become a sinner through the ages. "I have seen many girls like you. You are the second Gu Yunzu. 10 updates completed. Please give me a monthly ticket. And thank you all very much for your tips. Thank you very much. I love you." Then the winner of Love Scenery can enter the group and find the administrator, and send a pillow to the little cutie. Amnesiac Bigshot remembers only me, the boss lost his memory and only remembers me. Author, Ding Jiashu. Chapter 778. Wen Qiao clenched her fists and compared her with Gu Xiao's mother, which indeed made her feel extremely uncomfortable. But she endured it. "I am not Gu Yunzu number 2, I am me. I am Wen Qiao. I like Fu Nanli and I am very good to him. After being with him, I never thought of taking advantage of him. He treats me well and I also treat him well. Treat him as well as you can, we are equal and mutual." Fu Huayong was obviously disdainful, "You are indeed not Gu Yunzu. You are much more skillful than Gu Yunzu. If you refuse but welcome him, you are playing a long game to catch the big fish." Wen Qiao closed his eyes and told himself that he could not argue with the patient, not to mention that the patient was Fu Nanli's grandfather. "I know you don't believe me no matter what I say, but I just want to tell you that I will treat him well. My biggest expectation for him is that he is happy." Fu Huayong didn't have the patience to listen anymore. "Your sweet words are useful to Nan Li, but they are useless to me. No matter how fantastic you say, I will never believe you. As long as my old man is alive for one day, you won't believe me. I hope to enter the Fu family's door." Wen Qiao sighed helplessly in his heart, "No matter what, you have to take care of yourself. Only when you are healthy will Nan Li be happy." The old man treated her coldly, "You can get out now, there is no need to pretend in front of me." The better her attitude, the more unhappy he becomes. These poor people are accustomed to wearing a mask and keeping their heads down. After a long time, their greedy fangs will be exposed. Wen Qiao raised her eyebrows. The clay figurine still had 3 fires. What's more, she, Wen Qiao, was magnanimous, and the old man's attitude also aroused her dissatisfaction. But because the other party was a patient, she said in a deep voice, "If I enter on my own one of the top 10 richest people in the country, I hope you will no longer have any prejudice against me and don't think that I stay with Fu Nanli just for money. When you encounter a problem, solve it." This is Wen Qiao's style of doing things. But I heard the old man sneer lightly and said with great disdain, "Top 10 in the country? You can't even get into the top 10 in Haikan." The little girl was young and didn't know how high the world was. Nan Li gave her a little money and really thought she could become a celebrity. Wen Qiao looked solemn, "If I can enter the top 10 in Haikan's wealth list, I hope you will stop being prejudiced against me. Stop dreaming, you can go out." Wen Qiao nodded slightly, "I'll take it as your consent. Take care. I'll come visit you when I have time." After saying that, he turned around and left the ward. "Let Nan Li come in." Before going out, the old man threw a few words. When Fu Nanli saw her coming out, he asked in a low voice whether his grandfather had caused trouble for her, and Wen Qiao naturally said no. Fu Nanli entered the ward, and only Wen Qiao and Qiu Ya were left outside the ward. Wen Qiao didn't bother to talk to her. He put his hands in his pockets and leaned against the wall lazily. Qiu Ya smiled, "Grandpa Fu seems to be a little hostile to you, don't take it to heart." Wen Qiao's eyes were full of impatience, and he smiled slightly, "Really? I don't think Grandpa Fu has any hostility towards me." Qiu Ya didn't expect her to say that, so her tone became a little softer. "Actually, Grandpa Fu doesn't like flattering people, but prefers people who are frank and straightforward. If you really have any dissatisfaction in your heart, tell him directly, come out and speak clearly, and I think the problem will be solved." Wen Qiao's smile turned cold. This Miss Qiu is really Sima Zhao's heart, and everyone knows it. What does she want to do? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Amnesiac Bigshot remembers only me, the boss lost his memory and only remembers me. Author, Ding Jiashu. Chapter 779. She just wanted to provoke her to argue with Fu Nanli's grandfather, and to stimulate her to be herself. Then maybe Grandpa Fu would be so angry with her that her condition would relapse. In that case, Fu Nanli would be in a dilemma if he was caught in the middle. Miss Qiu is very calculating. Well, I have taken note of your suggestion. Next time I meet Grandpa Fu, I will tell her directly whatever I have to say. Qiu Ya smiled, and a cold light flashed in her eyes. She can keenly detect whether her opponent is easy to handle or not. This Wen Qiao was not as innocent and easy to fool as she imagined a female college student would be. She would make her dizzy after just a few words and use her true-hearted principles in front of the old man. In that case, Wen Qiao would be completely out of the game. Mr. Fu doesn't like true temperament. What he wants is obedience, absolute obedience. Anyone who argues with him will be blacklisted. While talking, Fu Nanli came out of the ward. He originally looked at the lazy man standing up straight and walking towards him. Fu Nanli naturally put his arms around her waist. Wen Qiao has never been a person who likes to show off, but now he glanced at Qiu Ya meaningfully, with a hidden smile on his lips. Qiu Ya is a smart person and keenly read the message in Wen Qiao's eyes. "Sister, I advise you not to waste your efforts, this man is mine." Fu Nanli didn't even look at her. Wen Qiao nodded, "We'll leave first." Qiu Ya pretended to be generous, "Go slowly." In the courtyard downstairs, the two of them got into the car. Wen Qiao asked him, "Did your grandfather say anything to you?" "Nothing said. It was nothing more than telling him that Wen Qiao was a bad boy full of evil intentions." "Well, Grandpa overestimates children. How can she be so thoughtful?" Wen Qiao moved closer to him, "Miss Qiu seems to be very popular with your grandfather. In the war just now, Chuya acted as if she was her own person. Fu Nanli leaned closer, "Are you jealous?" Wen Qiao stepped back until he reached the car door. With no way to retreat, he stretched out his hand to support his broad chest. "I'm not jealous, I just think she might be your grandpa's satisfactory granddaughter-in-law." Fu Nanli held her soft hand. "Mrs. Fu's position is yours. No matter how satisfied grandpa is, it's useless. Wen Qiao, I told your grandfather that when I can become one of the top 10 richest people in the country, he can no longer be biased against me." But Fu Nanli's face darkened slightly. "How much?" "Top 10. Fu Nanli gritted his teeth. "You ignorant girl, do you know how many rich people there are in the country? Just in Hiken, they say that if you throw a brick casually, all the people it hits are billionaires." Wen Qiao's heart sank. Are there so many rich people? No wonder the old man looked at her with disdain just now. Fu Nanli raised his head and said, "Do you know how much assets you have now?" Wen Qiao calculated in his mind. Meslin Pharmaceuticals previously developed a specific drug for blood diseases and made a lot of money. The amount allocated to me is about 40 million. The project invested by Fu Nanli was not favored by Ye Mingkaiu at first, but in the end the profit doubled, which also made Ye Mingkaiu admire Wen Qiao's ability with admiration. What else? Clubs, entertainment companies. Wen Qiao was a little troubled. Clubs and entertainment companies are relatively small, and the two combined are not half as big as Metza. Fu Nanli's heart sank. After deducting everything, you have a net worth of 60 million. Wen Qiao, yeah, almost. Amnesiac Bigshot remembers only me, the boss lost his memory and only remembers me. Author, Ding Jiashu. Chapter 780. Fu Nanli called Fu Chuan. "Check for me how many people would rank among the richest people in the country with a net worth of 60 million. The speakerphone was on, and Fu Chuan's unabashed chuckle came. When did Master Fu's standards drop to such a low level? Can 60 million be considered a rich man? Wen Qiao touched his neck. "Brother, this is a bit disrespectful." "Check it." Fu Nanli raised his hand and touched Wen Qiao's head with a low voice. "Wait a minute." After a moment, Fu Chuan's voice came. "There are 120,000 people with assets over 50 million, 50,000 people with assets over 100 million, 2,000 people with assets over 1 billion, and 2 people with assets over 10 billion. 100 people, 60 million, probably ranks around the 80,000 or 90,000th. Wen Qiao breathed out. "The road is blocked and difficult." Fu Nanli said solemnly, "I know." After hanging up the phone, the atmosphere in the car was a little awkward, and then he reached out and rubbed the top of her hair. "But at the age of 21, you can have 60 million assets by yourself. You should be the first one in the country, so you are still very powerful." Wen Qiao nodded. Fu Nanli played with her soft hair. "You should ask me before you say such harsh words. Set yourself a more achievable goal, such as being in the top 1000 on the wealth list. Do you think I can't achieve my goal?" Fu Nanli, "No, I just think it will take a long time." After speaking, he leaned close to her ear and said, "Your boyfriend is 1 year older and is no longer young." Wen Qiao stretched out a hand. "I will try to achieve this goal in 5 years." Fu Nanli's temples were swollen and painful. "Otherwise, if I give you money, I can go to overseas markets to take the money back, and I won't be able to find out where you got the money. It's okay to take shortcuts occasionally." Wen Qiao crossed his long legs and said, "Young Master Fu looks down on others. I told your grandfather that you should rely on yourself and not accept foreign aid. Mr. Fu has a black face. How can he look down on others? Forget it, just let her go. He believes in the child's strength. Meslin Pharmaceuticals is a project she has set her sights on, and she even made tens of millions with him. Entertainment companies and esports clubs are also running smoothly. In time, he will definitely be a business tycoon. He really doesn't need to encourage others. Fu Nanli pinched her face and said, then I'll wait and see. Country M, a villa on the west coast of the mountains. The room decoration is simple and exquisite, with grey and white colors interspersed, and the visual effect is very comfortable. Gu Xiao was lying on the huge bed. Next to him was an electrocardiograph and brainwave meter, monitoring his heart and brain waves. After an examination, 4 doctors in white coats left the room, while 2 nurses carefully guarded the bedside. The leading doctor left the room and walked towards the man standing in front of the floor-to-ceiling window. Sir, the patient's heart and lung lobes are normal, and the brain activity is slow. The patient seems to have the intention of escaping from reality. At present, he is probably greedy for the dreams he created and is unwilling to do anything. Wake up. Hizawei lit the cigarette in his hand. If this continues in the long run, what will be the consequences? I will become a vegetative state and never wake up. Isn't there any special treatment method to wake him up? Isn't it possible to create a dream and enter his dream? That was a scene from a movie. Medical skills have not yet developed to this stage. If he acts rashly, his life will be directly destroyed. Hizawei was a little irritable. The vase on the cabinet nearby was damaged. The doctor shook his head. He knew that this man had a bad temper, and he regarded Gu Xiao as his younger brother.